Everyone, my name is Tiffany Budd. I am the Sustainability Operations Coordinator for NKU. I want to thank you for attending this presentation by 80 Acres Farm as part of NKU's Campus Sustainability Month. First off, cover a few housekeeping tips before we begin. Please keep yourself muted during the presentation. There'll be time for questions at the end. Additionally, feel free to submit questions through the chat or the Q&A. I want to thank 80 Acres for taking the time to present today. 80 Acres Farm is a local hydroponic farm that never uses pesticides and utilizes 97% less water than traditional farming. Presenting to us today is Liz Warren-Novick, HR Coordinator and Marketing Support for 80 Acres, and also an NKU alumni.
Hey, woo! Should I go like this? Oh no!
That's right.
It's been too long. I'm letting you all down. I'm sorry.
I'll hand it over to you. Take care.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining in. I'm so happy that I got to connect with Tiffany. So being an NKU alumni, this is really special for me to connect with everyone. And I graduated in 2014 with a communication degree and a minor in journalism. And it was a really incredible 4 years, such a great school. I was telling Tiffany that I took a lot of night classes, so I loved walking around campus at night. But it was great, a great experience. So thank you guys for joining me and wanting to learn more about 80 Acres Farms. With me today too is also Victoria Grechny, and she is actually our brand ambassador lead. Sorry, Victoria, I feel like I hiccuped over your last name. I should know this by now, but she's incredible. She's relatively new to our team, but she's doing a fantastic job, and she is looking for people to join the brand ambassador team. So if anyone's interested after our presentation about learning more about open opportunities within our farms, just feel free to reach out to us. But to kind of get started, Tiffany gave a great overview. We are a local indoor hydroponic farm. We never use pesticides whatsoever, so everything is completely fresh, completely clean. We harvest everything and deliver within a day of harvest, so it's going to last a lot longer. I can't put this on paper, but I've had our lettuce actually last me well over a month, which is insane. And pretty much with any local produce, you know, it's going to last a lot longer because oftentimes our produce will actually travel over 2,000 miles. So that's a lot of miles that your food is traveling. So it spends the majority of its life in transportation rather than being with the consumer. So for us, it's really important to keep things local, keep things fresh. And since we grow indoors too, we'll have local produce all year round. So even in these approaching winter months, we'll have fresh summer produce. And then before I kind of move to the next slide, just kind of an overview about who we are. So the idea of 80 Acres Farms formed in 2016. And then we actually executed that idea in 2017. So we're coming up on about 5 years of being in production. We started down in Cincinnati. So our first farm is down on SD Avenue, kind of near Northside in the Spring Grove Village area. And that facility, that farm is actually set up quite different than any of the other farms that we're going to have in the future or we do now. Just because that was kind of our first farm. We learned a lot from them. It's our baby, so we hold it kind of near and dear. But it actually used to be an old ink factory. So we went in, we refurbished, and we gave that building new life. But what makes that facility so special is that all of our crops are actually kind of closed off into their own grow zones. So that makes it super easy to bring the public in to do public events and tours. We don't do so much now because of COVID, but we're hoping to ramp that back up probably in the next year or so. But what's special about that is if you add all those grow zones together, it equals 12,000 square feet. And in that 12,000 square feet, we can grow 80 acres worth of produce in a year. So that's actually how we got our name. What's great about that facility too is it has the most variety. So if you ever get the chance to go down there, we have a multi-layer room, which has multiple different layers of basil. So it goes about 4 levels high. So nothing but basil is grown in that room. We have a few different containers where we're testing out different crops. So we have like a few R&D containers, and then we have a single layer room, which has our tomato and cucumber crops. So it's nothing but vine crops in there. It's almost like a fantasy world. It's beautiful. And since everything is closed away in that farm, we can actually introduce native bumblebees to help with the pollination process. So like I mentioned before, since we don't use any pesticides, we have to rely on beneficial bugs. So we use nematodes, rove beetles, spiders, ladybugs, bumblebees. So it's really cool that we get to kind of control the entire environment and create our own ecosystem. And then we also grow microgreens in that facility as well. And what those are is they're a step above a sprout. They're grown in the light as opposed to the dark. And we only harvest the stem and then the little buds up at the top. It's not even their leaves yet. It's not even the true leaves. So since it's so young, it's full of nutrition and full of flavor. So oftentimes I'll, hear people say, I don't want to give it a try. I don't eat rabbit food is what I hear oftentimes. But when people actually give it a chance and they taste it, it's just full of flavor. I've converted many meat lovers to be veggie lovers. So it's a good starting point. From that facility, we actually migrated up into Hamilton, which is where I'm at now. And we have 2, soon to be 3 farms up here. One is nothing but tomato vines. So we call that our vine location. And all of those crops can actually live up to a year just because they're in the perfect environment. So kind of to give you guys a visual of what that looks like, and I have a few photos in our presentation, but the tomato plants actually kind of rest in a gutter system. We'll put those little tomato babies in there and we'll train them up on this string that we have hanging down from the ceiling. The tomato vines are going to wrap around, they're going to continue to grow. And when they get too close to the lights that we have in there, our farmers will lean and lower them. And that's going to give the crop a little bit of slack. It's going to take them away from the heat of that light. And then we're going to wrap the vines around the perimeter of the gutter system we have. So it gives the plants slack, and then it cleans up and clears some room for our farmers to walk in between and harvest and prune. And what's really special about that farm as well is obviously since we don't use sunlight, we need to find an alternative. So we utilize LED lighting. So we utilize the red light spectrum and the blue light spectrum. So for that particular farm, we want to utilize more of that red light spectrum because that's going to promote more of a generative growth. It's going to promote flowering and fruiting, and that's what we want for our cucumbers and tomatoes. And then at our lettuce farm, we want to have more of that blue light spectrum because that promotes chlorophyll production and keeps those plants in a vegetative state. So I like to call it the eternal youthful farm. So I kind of want to fall asleep with that blue light on my face. I want to see, if it helps me whatsoever. But anyway, so at that tomato farm, we actually had one of our crops turn a year old. And we gave it a little hat. We celebrated its birthday. It was fantastic. But I digress. So 10 minutes away, we actually have our robotic farm. And that's really new and high tech for us. It's a little bit more operations and tech focused, but that's where we grow the majority of our lettuce. We're actually testing out spinach now. And to go back to the robot, we actually named the robot Sam. And Sam was actually named after one of our first employees, Samantha Bergman. So it's a great tribute. It's a great cross off of her bucket list. But Sam is essentially one big arm. So Sam helps us with transplanting and heavy lifting. And what our farmers do is they'll actually walk up to the screen, they'll type in the coordinates for Sam, and then Sam will know which container, which tray, which row to latch down onto. And she'll help us with that transplanting and the heavy lifting. So it's pretty cool to see, how farmers can work with Sam. And then right next door is our newest farm called 70K. So like I mentioned before, 80 acres worth of produce can grow in a 12,000 square foot space. So this farm is going to be 70,000 square feet. So you can only imagine the amount of produce that we can have in a year. And that we actually have our first seeding taking place Monday. So it's a huge project that we're undertaking together. It's uncharted territory, so it's going to be really exciting. But we should have our first harvest there mid-November. So really excited. So a huge intro, I apologize, but now I'll get the presentation started. So this is kind of what we're all about. So we believe that everyone should have access to fresh local food year round. Food should taste great. Food should be grown where people are. What we consume should be wholesome, nutritious, and free from pesticides. Feeding people should not endanger our environment or deplete our natural resources. Food should be affordable, not cheap. So traditional agriculture needs to evolve to address global challenges and meet, there we go, and meet consumer demands. So global trends. So in less than in so many years, we're going to have 10 billion people on this planet. That's a huge amount of people. We have a growing population. That's a lot of mouths to feed. And everyone is actually kind of gravitating more towards the city. So a lot of urbanization. On average, our food, if it's not local, is going to travel over 2,000 miles. So kind of like I mentioned before, that's a lot of miles that your food is taking. And just for example, a lot of the produce that we're used to, if it's not local, is going to be prematurely picked. So it's not going to be fully developed. It's going to be clipped from its mother source. And then it's going to be sprayed with something called ethylene, which is a natural hormone that the produce actually already produces. But with our human hands, we're going to give it that hormone. So it's not, it hasn't reached that point in its development. So we're going to spray the outside with ethylene. It's going to look fully developed on the outside. So tomato, for instance, it's going to look beautiful and red. When you cut into that tomato, it's going to be white. It's going to have a weird texture because it's been bred for transportation. So we need it to have tough skin, and it's not going to have the full flavor. So, if you're not a tomato fan, that could be why. I highly encourage you to try a local tomato, and I definitely encourage you to try our tomatoes because they are like candy. 70% of fresh water is used on agriculture, and in less than 80 years, phosphorus may be completely gone. So that's extremely alarming. With us, each farm is going to have a different irrigation method, but one thing that remains true is we will always utilize 97% less water than traditional farming. And how we do that is, no matter how many times a day the water pumps through our plant beds, whatever the plants don't uptake, it's going to transpire. And we're going to capture that transpiration and turn it back into a liquid with the nutrients. So we're constantly recycling our water. We're constantly recycling our nutrients. We're being super mindful and hopefully slowing down that process. So the nutrients that we use are just nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, phosphorus, all of the above, all things that plants need. And then food safety. So if you look at this photo here, I don't know if you guys remember, conveniently 2 years in a row, there was a romaine recall on Thanksgiving. And so oftentimes the reason why that happens is a lot of farmers will send their produce to a wash facility. So it'll be an outside water source, not a lot of traceability. So if any bacteria is introduced to that produce, there's really no traceability at that point, and everything has to be pulled off the shelf. So it's a lot of food waste and a lot of concern. So with us, you can be rest assured that everything is harvested and packed under one roof. And we have no reason to bring in any outside water source because there's nothing ever on our produce. All of our farmers actually use gloves throughout the entire process. So the consumer is going to be the first one that actually touches their food. Consumer trends, clean food, that actually looks delicious. I have to admit I had an apple pastry today, so I should have gone for that salad. And then functional and superfoods, so another consumer trend. Reduced food waste. So a lot of food is wasted throughout the year, and reduced plastics. So this one I hold really near and dear. Hopefully everyone does. Right now, some of our produce is in plastic packaging, but we are constantly looking for new ways to be as sustainable as possible. Right now, we're actually looking more into paper packaging, and a few of our retailers, we've actually tested out naked packaging, so no packaging whatsoever. So Madison's down in Findlay is one of our retailers that actually does that with our tomatoes. So if you want to ever pick up just loose tomatoes, they'll fill up a little container for you and send you on your way. And then eat local. So just by eating local, you can cut down these transportation miles. You can support local farmers and just kind of find fun new recipes for local produce. So. And even if it's not us, even if you have a favorite local farmer, I encourage you to support them. But with us, since we grow indoors, we'll have this year round. So you can get that tomato in the winter months. So this is the current supply chain. So this is pretty much what happens to produce if it's not local. It's going to have all these different steps, and it's going to take about 2 weeks to get to the grocery store from the farm. So this is a lot of different stops that your produce takes and a lot of different hands that are handling your food. And by the time it gets to that grocery store, it's already lost 45% of its nutrient value. So at that point, it's pretty much halfway lost the nutrients that you could have consumed. And that's pretty much why sometimes when you purchase produce, it only lasts about 2 to 3 days in your fridge. And then that leads to food waste. So $161 billion are lost in food waste happens annually. So pretty intense. This is 80 Acres Farm's supply chain. So it comes from the farm, it goes to the retailer, and then to the consumer. So whenever we harvest our produce, it's either delivered within that day or the next. So it's going to be at the retailer right when it was freshly picked, and then hopefully directly to your home. And also what's great is it lasts a crazy amount of time. So like I mentioned before, that lettuce, I've had it last me almost a month. Since it's so local and since it's so fresh and it's not living its life in transportation, is going to live its full life with you. So less stops to the grocery store. So our story, so this is Mike Zelkind and this is Tisha Livingston. So they are the two co-founders of 80 Acres Farms. They have a long and huge background in food industry. So they, a lot of knowledge here. They put all of their retirement money into this company. So it was just something they really believed. In their past employment, they actually worked with a lot of different local farmers. And oftentimes, they would call them and say, hey, why aren't we getting our shipment today? Why can't we, fulfill this request? And they actually decided to kind of travel up the East Coast and talk to a lot of their farmers. And oftentimes, again, they'd hear the farmers say, hey, we're having too much rain. We're having not enough rain. There's too much sun. There's not enough sun. So this really kind of sparked the idea for Mike and Tish to figure out a consistent way that we can get local, nutritious produce. At first, they actually started considering greenhouses, but with greenhouses, you still rely on outside elements. So really the idea of indoor farming kind of sparked into their minds. And so, like I said, they put all their investment money in, and along the way, we've had a lot of great investors. So still very much in startup mode, but moving along relatively quickly. So these are some photos of our farms. So you'll see here, this is our tomato crops. This is a photo of our vine location. So that's the tomato farm that I was telling you about a little bit earlier. So these guys are still relatively young little vines, but they're making their way up to the top of that ceiling. And what's really great is when you walk in here, I almost feel like Willy Wonka every time I open the door and show people in, but your eyes will adjust to this light. It's not harmful whatsoever. But when you leave the room, you'll actually have green vision. So it's kind of fun. It's just the green light reflecting off. Down here is a photo of our Cincinnati location. So these are cucumber crops. And a fun little thing that I like to share, I don't know why I like to share this, but we have something called P-grade cukes. And what that is just pickling grade. And the reason why we call it that is because these cucumbers grow in really fun, wacky shapes. So we'll have a cucumber, sometimes it'll grow in a curlicue or zigzags. And the reason for that is if a farmer bumps a blossom or if a little pest bites a blossom, it's going to cause that cucumber to grow in funky shapes. So it's just kind of fun to see. Whenever I would do kids tours, I'd always try and order those P-grade cukes just to pass them out. But I relate to this because I have scoliosis, so I connect with that cucumber. Anyway, sorry for my terrible jokes. Right here is our plant tracks facility. So this is all the lettuce that we have. We have about 3 lettuce varieties here, but we have much more that we grow in there. And then this is Sam the robot. So you can kind of see these different containers. I think we have about 6 containers, and all together we have about 1,000 trays inside. So a few more photos here. This is kind of a cool shot of our gutter system. The irrigation method that we have within our vine farm is, so we actually use kind of a drip emitter tube that you'll see right there. And what that does is, I think about every hour for 30 minutes, this little tube is going to emit water and nutrients for about 30 minutes. So that's how the plants are actually going to get the water and the nutrients within this farm. And what's kind of cool too is depending on the farm, we will use 2 different types of soil substitutes. So oftentimes when people think of hydroponics, they just think of the plant and water, but we still need something for our plants to start their life often. So we need something for the germination process. And then we also need something to support that plant as it grows. So we utilize 2 different types of soil substitutes. And I kind of like to compare this to the Aztec floating gardens. So it's just kind of a nice example that I like to use. And that would probably more so be aquaponics, but kind of what the Aztecs did is they found resources around the waterbed. They crafted a raft. And then when they would put their plants on that raft, they used mud to kind of support the growth of that plant. So the roots would still kind of dangle down into the water and soak up the nutrients and water it needed, but it was still supported by that mud. So at our Cincinnati location and at our plant tracks location, we use something called Rockwool. And what that is it's a really porous, kind of spongy little soil substitute. It's coconut core and cocoa core and peat moss. And what we do is we'll dunk it in water, we'll put a seed inside. In about 2 days, the germination process will happen. And then we'll put it in propagation. So that's our little nursery. We'll put it in propagation for about a week. And it's super critical to move those guys at the right moment. Otherwise, since they're so close together, they're going to start competing for light and get really lengthy and stretch out. So we want to transplant them at the exact correct moment. And then as those plants continue to grow, those roots are going to dangle down outside of that soil substitute, and they're just going to dangle in the water. And so that soil substitute is just going to give it support. You'll see here with our vines, we use something called Rockwool. And what this is spun volcanic rocks. It's almost like a rock cotton candy. And this one's really great for vine crops because when you get it wet, it gets super heavy. So it's just extra support for those heavy vines. And then I have a little video here that I'll show you guys. So hopefully you guys will be able to hear it. Victoria, send me a text if for some reason it sounds weird. But this is a video that we created probably about 2 years ago. And it's just a fun little video, a little cartoon. And it kind of explains what we're doing currently and what we hope to do. So I hope you guys enjoy it. It's about a minute long. Hopefully it's not too loud, and hopefully it's not too soft.
Imagine a farm where there's no need for soil, that uses 97% less water, that has no need for pesticides or GMOs, that grows produce 3 times faster with yields 100 times larger on a smaller footprint. Imagine a farm that feeds the plants the ideal amount of light energy with the precise amount of carbon dioxide, nutrients, and airflow, that adjusts temperature and humidity to fit each plant's needs. Imagine a farm that nearly eliminates all food miles from grower to grocer the same day. At 80 Acres Farms, you don't have to imagine this. It already exists. Our team of experts utilize state-of-the-art technology to master the science of farming. Our indoor vertical farms grow the widest variety and the best qualities in greens, herbs, fruits, and heirloom vegetables. Our fully automated modular units use smart vision systems that monitors 24/7 to ensure the happiest and healthiest plants. Our growers focus on plant health and nutrition, while our robots do the heavy lifting safely and cleanly. Our produce is packaged on-site within a day of harvest and delivered delicious and fresh to your dinner plate. With 5 locations in operation, our vision is to expand within the nation, then the world, to eliminate all fresh produce scarcity. Our custom-built grow zones can be placed anywhere to produce an abundance of fresh produce all year long, regardless of climate. We are the oasis in a food desert. We optimize farming with science and technology to bring Plantopia to life. This is Plantopia. This is 80 Acres Farms. Better for you, better for communities, better for the plants, and better for the planet.
Hey, I never get tired of that video. So kind of to touch on the different locations where we're at now. So we do have a farm in North Carolina and Arkansas, but those are much more for R&D. So right now we are developing strawberries, raspberries, spinach, eggplant, peppers. So we're doing a lot of testing right now. So hopefully we'll be able to have year-round strawberries soon, which would be incredible. As it said that we hope to expand within the world, Tisha Livingston, who's our president of the company, actually created her own company. So she's the CEO of Infinite Acres. And what Infinite Acres is we work very closely side by side. But Infinite Acres sells the technology, and then 80 Acres Farms will go in and manage that farm and watch the growth of the plants and make sure everything's working properly. So Infinite Acres is much more so international. So right now we have conversations with Norway, Shanghai, Nigeria, Australia, Canada. So a lot of prospects. Hopefully that'll happen soon. And we're actually working on something called a passport program. So probably within the next year and a half, this will start to roll out. So anyone on our team, if they're wanting to sign up for that passport program, it would be their job to go to these locations and then build a farm there. So kind of, have the knowledge from here and take it to one of those locations. So pretty interesting. So we value environmental impact. So 5.6 billion pounds of pesticides are used annually, which is crazy. We don't use any whatsoever. 70% of fresh water is used on agriculture. We save 12 million gallons by using 97% less water. 1.3 billion tons of food is wasted. And then 18.7 million acres of forest is lost annually. So we're able to farm inside on a much smaller scale and a much smaller footprint of land. And then 78% of the ocean is polluted by chemical fertilizers. And then on average, globally, food will travel over 2,400 miles. So in no way am I ever trying to put down traditional agriculture. I love traditional agriculture. I actually have a background in Cincinnati Parks, so I used to work there. And then I also used to work at Whole Foods in the produce department. So I love, meeting local farmers. I love being outside. But I think that indoor farming and traditional agriculture just need to find a way to kind of have a happy marriage and live side by side. Our brand promise. So 80 Acres Farms brings you the next generation of fresh, delicious foods, grown 100% pesticide-free at an eco-friendly indoor farm near you. So like I said before, 100% pesticide and residue-free. And when I say residue, oftentimes some farmers, even if they claim organic, which I think organic farming is fantastic, sometimes there'll be a row of organic crops, and then other times there'll be a row of conventional crops. And when they spray the conventional crops, sometimes the wind and rain will kind of carry that over to the organic crops. So that causes a little bit of a residue. With us, nothing's ever used. There's no chance of any of these residues. So completely clean produce. Everything's harvested at peak nutrition. So oftentimes in a field, there'll be about 50% waste. With us, we have about 5% waste. And with that 5% waste, we work with local organizations and we'll donate all of that produce that retailers and restaurants just don't necessarily purchase. So just picked for longer freshness. And then eco-friendly farming. So all of our farms are actually powered either by solar or hydro. So our Cincinnati location, we actually purchased this Duke Energy plan. And kind of what happens is companies and homes that utilize solar panels, whatever excess energy they have, it goes into this Duke Energy bank. And we purchase from that bank. So we're able to utilize that solar power and power our Cincinnati farm. Our Hamilton farms are all hydropower. So just another way that we're utilizing water. This is our retail line. So this is just, what our product looks like. So we have 8 different varieties of lettuce. And then we have some herbs. The chives are my absolute favorite. Hopefully we'll bring those back. I know that we stopped for the time being, but they're delicious. If you guys like to snack at midnight like I do, it's like the perfect salty snack. And then these are the microgreens that I was talking about earlier. So I actually really didn't know what these were until I started working at 80 Acres, but they're incredible. A lot of flavor, a lot of nutrition. The broccoli microgreens, for instance, if you eat a quarter cup of those, it's the equivalent to a pound of broccoli. So it's a great way to sneak in nutrition. It's really delicious. You can put it on anything. I wouldn't necessarily cook with them, but I would just put them on, as a little topper. And kind of how we grow these guys. It's pretty easy if anyone, wanted to grow them from home, but you just got to be careful because you want to make sure that they're growing properly and cleanly. But what we do is we use a biostrate pad. And what that is it's like a fabric that's natural woven materials. We'll dunk that in water, we'll sprinkle some seeds, and then in about 7 to 10 days, we'll have these microgreens and we'll harvest them by hand. We have baby cucumbers, tomatoes, and then we actually just partnered up with Eli's Barbecue. We have our own little signature salad. These are some of our favorite customers and food service. So if you see any, that's where we are. And then just kind of what local chefs are saying, which is always nice. And some customers, which I find funny. It's Ken, Nick, Janet, and Mary. And then this is one other video that I have. So this was actually filmed close to a year ago. And you'll actually be able to essentially meet Tish and Mike in this video. And you'll be able to kind of take a look at our Vine location and our Plantrax location. So enjoy. And Victoria, if for some reason they can't hear this, feel free to give me a text.
80 Acres was created after spending 30 years in the food industry and realizing that our food system is broken. Mother Nature's so unpredictable.
Oh, sorry, guys.
That it leaves our farmers struggling every year. Prices are unpredictable, the quality of the produce is unpredictable, and the supply is unpredictable. We can't always get the produce we want whenever we want them. Indoor farming is that better way. So we created 80 Acres.
We have the ability with our technology to be able to control the environment so that we can get the most out of plants.
We built a system that allows us to grow with level of reliability of any manufacturing plant, not a farm. We're creating the future of farming by growing product right next to the distribution point and get the product to our customer within a day of harvest.
At 80 Acres, we believe that people should be able to rely on the quality and the flavor of the produce that they get time and again at their grocery store.
I think our customers love 80 Acres product because it's local, fresh, right down the road, and you can get it year-round. They offer different varieties of herbs and salad mixes, which a lot of local chefs have a hard time finding around here.
The food that 80 Acres produces is incredible. The first one that caught my attention was the cherry tomatoes. When you eat this tomato, it's summer. It could be snowing outside, but it still tastes like summer.
When a consumer's 7-year-old says, "Can I have more salad?" then you know that you're doing something right. It also puts a mom's mind at ease when they know that we're pesticide-free and that our produce is clean.
Here at 80 Acres, we're raising the standard of organic farming. We use a lot less water, we use a lot less plastic, our product is a lot fresher, we use absolutely no pesticides. And we have the freedom of not planting our seeds in the soil that's been contaminated for decades.
I grew up in Cincinnati, I'm from the west side, knowing that everything I do here is being distributed to my local friends and neighbors, and the idea that I have a chance to be a part of something groundbreaking is the reason why I get out of bed every day.
I love working somewhere where I know that I have a small hand in making a huge impact on the planet. Every day we are using less and growing more.
Every day we change the planet one vegetable at a time.
This is the future of farming.
Better for you.
Better for our community, better for our world.
Yay. All right. And so that is pretty much the end of that presentation. So I'm gonna, let me see. There we go. Perfect. So I'd love to answer any questions you guys may have or extend a little bit more on something you guys may have seen and you want to learn more about. So I'll kind of open the floor for any questions. And I don't know if there were any questions in the chat.
We do have some in the chat, yeah.
Oh, great.
So one of your slides, you referenced superfoods as a consumer trend. Can you kind of elaborate on what superfoods are?
Sure. So I would actually say probably spinach, kale, broccoli, pomegranates, really anything that has a lot of antioxidants and anything that is going to protect our immune system, help us get strong. So with us, if I had to say kind of what a superfood was for something that we grow currently, I would say those microgreens, definitely the broccoli microgreens for sure. So anything that has a lot of immune boosting attributes, anything that has a lot of nutrients in it would definitely be a superfood in my mind. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. Victoria, if you want to add anything. But
no, that was perfect. I was going to say like avocado, I know is a very popular superfood that people like to reference, but our microgreens are absolutely insane. Just the fact that you can have a quarter cup of broccoli microgreens and it's equivalent to a pound nutrition wise is insane.
And we, our Arkansas team right now is actually doing a lot of studies on breaking down the nutrients that we have in all of our produce. So that way we'll be able to make more claims and we'll be able to kind of know exactly, what a person can strive for and look for if they are unfortunately going through some sort of illness. So hopefully they'll be able to kind of be directed more towards a certain type of one of our produce or one of our products. What do you do about pollution indoors?
Pollination.
Oh, pollination. Oh, I was like, oh no, thank you. Pollination. So we actually, so at our Cincinnati location in that vine room, we utilize native bumblebees. So they'll actually go around and pollinate for us. If we don't have the bumblebees, our farmers will actually kind of walk up and down the aisles that we have and gently shake the leaves. So that pollen's going to fall. And then do you want to put the last slide up for visual? Oh, that's you, Tiffany. Awesome. Yes, I do. There we go. And then do you ever have extra produce? If so, what do you do with it? So yes, so we do have about 5% waste. Sometimes, if something's been ordered a little bit more for a marketing event and say that marketing event, falls through, or if it's bad weather, we will make sure that we either send that produce home to our employees or we'll donate it to local organizations. So at our Cincinnati location, we're right across from St. Vincent de Paul. We've worked with a company called La Soup in the past where they've taken, our produce and turned it into something magnificent. We just also worked with, other organizations. that just, are looking for some fresh produce to be donated. And let's see, what's your composting system like? So really good question. This is something that I'm really passionate about too. And I actually used to work with a woman named Julie Flickner, who worked with us, and she was incredible. She knew everything there was to know about composting. And she always told me to follow everything until the end. So, you may be satisfied with you recycle, but do you know where that recycling goes? Do you know, is it actually being recycled? So it's always great to ask questions. So thank you for asking questions here. We're working on our composting system. So we have a little composting unit in the back of our Cincinnati location that we kind of take care of ourselves. And then we always encourage people to take, our vine crops home, our little soil substitutes home, and use them in their own personal gardens. I know there is a company called Go Zero that we can utilize down in the Cincinnati area, and they'll just pick up composting at the side of the road. Up in Hamilton, we haven't fully gone into the composting yet, but as the 70K facility comes up and running, we're looking in so many ways to be constantly, sustainable and find new efforts. I think the closest composting center is in Yellow Springs. So we're just trying to figure out a way that we can have something a little bit more local. I know there used to be one really close to our Cincinnati location, but unfortunately, I think it wasn't managed. I don't know the full story, but I know that, the efforts were there, the thought was there. But I know a lot of people in the community kind of complained about the smell, and some things were being composted that shouldn't have been. So hopefully, the more support that has, and the more that we have more advocates for that, especially with recycling too. Really, I think the power is with the people. Is silly. Well, that's not silly, but it takes everybody, it takes an army to make a change. So we are in the process of improving our composting. What are your specifications for building it to grow in? For a building. We used to go into old abandoned buildings and kind of give it new life, and we still do. But kind of with our 2 new farms, everything was super specified and specific that we really had to grow from the ground up. So really, we just want a lot of space. We want to be clean. We want to be, a little bit more tech focused. So really, it's just kind of growing. I wouldn't say that indoor agriculture is new by any means, but I would say that the industry is. So we're kind of all learning off each other. We're kind of taking it day by day. So we've experimented with taking old buildings and giving it new life. And now we're experimenting with kind of building ground up and seeing kind of what the difference is and the amount of yield we can get and the better processes there. So really, I wouldn't say that there's a specific way or anything specific that we really look for, other than, making sure that we're in a good location and we can kind of branch out in all different directions. Hopefully staying within 100 miles, if not a little bit over. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, Liz, the next question I think ties really good to kind of your comment.
Oh, Victoria, do you mind? Sorry, I can't really hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think the next question ties really closely to what you were just saying, though, because they're asking about the economic model to what we're doing with the buildings and such, because they're referencing like HVAC and lighting. And I come from a mechanical engineering background, so and you do need certain certifications for things, but in the because they're asking about like in the long run, coming from that background, it's very expensive long term to keep up like certain items, especially like with outdoor farming. You continuously have to reuse and gather new information because you're depleting a lot of things. While with indoor farming, and you just said with like the buildings, we rebuild. We with our old SD farm that was completely an ink factory, and you take it and you change it to something else. So there's already the money that's put into some of those buildings to have that, like, you don't have to put new HVAC, you don't have to go down to MSD and have another conversation. But it's kind of like with a lot of renewable resources, you build something once, you take care of it, and it's sustainable long term.
Absolutely.
I was just saying too, because you mentioned that we had rebuilt in that old building, and I was like, oh, well, that's pretty sustainable with their stuff.
Yeah, and Victoria has an incredible background, so engineering, a lot of brand ambassador work, so she's kind of a jack of all trades.
Oh.
So she knows much more about the engineering than I do, I will say. And she's very quick at any mathematical problems I have, mathematics, so that's my kryptonite.
I love it.
And so actually our Vine location too is another recycled building. So that actually started off as an auto parts store and then became a furniture store. And then we turned it into our Vine crop location.
Wasn't Henry Ford involved with that building?
Maybe, I don't know for sure, but I know that it used to be an auto part facility. So we still have the old original elevator, which is kind of terrifying. So
Are your buildings considered LEED certified? Do they have certification through LEED?
I apologize. I don't know actually for sure. I would imagine so.
I'll say I know they go through there's a lot of people. I came from the Robotic Farm myself. That was my first position. And we would have people coming in all the time to make sure like things are run accurately. I started working for the company around when COVID started, and I felt like there was a lot of uncertainty, especially with like essential workers and their safety. And I had never felt any kind of like concern when I was going into 80 Acres Farms, because there are so many checks and balances to making sure that no outside germs, like you walk in, your shoes are already put into a liquid that cleans it immediately. So you can't even bring in outside germs. And they just, every single aspect, it seems like they've already had 4 people be like, well, what about this problem? So you are always feeling like, okay, no, like someone's checked this, someone's done this. And usually there's always someone there to like be that extra person to say like, well, how can we improve that? So it always just feels like there is someone that is always making sure what we're doing is like, okay. And
absolutely. And we encourage some of our farms, we encourage people to just leave their certain shoes there. So we really don't want any outside shoes to kind of enter in the facility. So we actually encourage people to leave their work boots there. We also have shoe covers that we utilize, hair nets, beard nets. We don't allow any jewelry, no nail polish, because that causes a foreign contamination risk. And then also we have Sds Sheets. We have a 80 Acres Farms hazard communication plan that's readily available to all of our farmers. So those Sds Sheets talk about any chemicals that may be brought into the farm. And then kind of, it breaks it down and tells you what to do if anything were to happen. And when I say chemicals, it's mostly just cleaning chemicals. So like bleach, anything like that. How do your prices compare to non-organic produce, like say Kroger? So it kind of depends on the retailer. I've seen our tomatoes be as low as about $2.99 all the way up to $5.99. So it's kind of insane to kind of see, we do have a set price. Normally we like our tomatoes to sell for about $3.99 for a 9-ounce container. But really the retailer kind of has the freedom to either raise it or, talk with us and lower it if they'd like. I would say that it's on par with organic. It's definitely above conventional. But definitely on par with organic.
I would say too, it even lasts longer. You're getting a bigger bang out of your buck with our food, just because like I can almost like secondary what you said earlier with the lettuce lasting in your fridge for over a month. It's insane because the food spends its life with you or like with us instead of on the shelves or in transportation. So you might have spent $4 on tomatoes, but those tomatoes lasted an extra 2 weeks. So you already maybe have went to Kroger again to buy more tomatoes for that week. And your old ones were already spoiled. And that's what a lot of my experiences was I would purchase either basil, or a lot of the times it would just be some sort of lettuce, and it would go bad in my fridge so much quicker than any 80 Acres things I would bring home.
And definitely I do have to say too that you're also paying for quality. So if you actually want a tomato to taste how a tomato should, if you want lettuce to taste how lettuce should, which I don't think a lot of us know really what lettuce should taste like. I mean, I've always been a fan of salads, but it wasn't until I started working here, which I know I'm biased since I work here, but really our lettuce does have a great flavor, great crunch. You'll actually realize that lettuce can be a star of a dish rather than just being something that you plop a bunch of great things on top of. And then you're like, hey, I ate a salad. But
well, Liz, I can vouch for that too. I don't work there, but I think your guys' lettuce is amazing, and I will never go back to buying the lettuce that I had before. And everything does last longer.
Thank you.
It's true, and I think that makes it, worth the price, but also the nutritional value is so much higher, and that's even more important than how much it costs. As you're nourishing your body more with this produce than with other types of produce, even traditional organic produce that's being shipped 2,000 miles. So
absolutely. Well, thank you. That means a lot. And also what's kind of nice too is I actually don't have a salad spinner. I should probably get one, but you don't have to wash any of our produce. You know, when I'm making a salad and I have to wash other produce, I'm like, there's a lot of excess water on here. With us, you can just open up the container and go to town.
That's my favorite part, just from like actually working in the farm too and seeing how it went from Sam harvested for us. It went through, or like when she moved it, it gets harvested and then we would pack it. Like I saw how clean and efficient everything was with the transition process, that I do feel so comfortable, like just going to Kroger, popping it open, like maybe on my way home, just being like, I'm gonna eat some tomatoes, or I'm gonna make myself a little salad, and I'm like, who knows, like maybe one of my friends like maybe like moved this over, and I always do a good job, like the I feel like a little present because someone just down the street did it instead of like 10 people, 20 people from 2,000 miles away that have touched your food.
Absolutely. And I thank you, Catherine, for your kind words. That's really sweet. And we're continuously growing. I know that I said before, we still very much are in that starter up mode, even though it may not seem like it. We've gotten a lot of support, so we are, ramping up really fast. But we want people to join our team. We want people to be a part of this. We have so many different people from so many different backgrounds. So, you don't necessarily have to study horticulture. You don't necessarily have to have an environmental studies background, but we love that. I mean, if you do, that's fantastic, because we welcome that knowledge and all of that time that you've spent within earning this degree. We, if anything, we prize that a lot. But, as long as you are excited, you want to make a difference, you have a passion for sustainability, and you're really just interested in this industry, as long as you're, someone that's going to get in there and, help us kind of complete our mission, then we're happy to talk to you and have you join our team. So a lot of opportunity for growth. Right now, we're focusing more on modern farmers, brand ambassadors. But as the company grows, there might be more opportunities with the marketing team, sales, continuous improvement.
They'll say engineering. They'll say, I love meeting all the engineering kids that come in and they have so many ideas. It's very exciting.
So I'm going to put, somebody just asked, so how do people join your team? So I'm going to put our website in there. And if you follow that link to our website, there's a little section that says connect at the top. You'll click that and there'll be a little option for careers. And then you'll see a list of different careers that we have. And I'll go ahead and put my email as well. So if anyone has any questions after this, they can always email me directly. And then I'll put Victoria's as well. So if anyone's interested in being a brand ambassador, which is kind of a relatively new program, we're kind of building from the ground up. It's a great program. It's a really great way to kind of get your, feet wet in the farm and in different retailers and different events. So right now, we are super cautious and we're limiting the amount of events that we go to because of COVID. But what brand ambassadors normally do, what brand ambassadors normally do, I just sent it to Tiffany. I didn't send it to everyone. I'm sorry. Let's see. So what brand ambassadors do is they actually go to different retailers and restaurants. They promote the product. They tell people why we're different. So it's a really great way to work on communication skills. And then also there's opportunity to work in the farm, even if you're being brand ambassador.
I think a lot of fun, like right now we're discussing with like a couple different places, like a couple different events. Like next weekend, I will be at the Washington Washington Fall Fest at Washington Park, so close to the city. If you guys are near Cincinnati, we'll be there and like we'll let people like try some of our samples, sell some things. We usually go to events like that, but we're also in retailers like she was saying, Whole Food Market, Fresh Time. Kroger's, we're always there trying to make sure that consumers know that we're here, and we're really just trying our best to give the most nutritional product that's not only like the video said is good for the planet, but good for us, good for our community.
So Liz, in your video, it mentioned that you want to expand internationally. Can you build these facilities anywhere in the world?
Absolutely. So it really depends on kind of what what the people are looking for in that specific area. So we can build a farm anywhere that we please. So if say, there's an area that kind of calls for more of a manual farm, we'll design it to that specification, or say it's, a location almost like Norway that's going to want something a little bit more robotic, a little bit more automated. We can build it that way as well.
And can you grow anything within these facilities, or are you limited to certain crops?
You can grow pretty much everything. It just kind of depends. So say you wanted to grow like a fig tree or anything like that. It's obviously going to take a little bit longer. We do have issues sometimes with kind of woody herbs or anything that's a little bit woody, because it's going to be, we need a little bit more support. We don't want it to be too saturated. But pretty much, if you can test it out and you can find the right mixture of nutrients and the right amount of water flow, pretty much anything can be grown indoors. So pretty exciting. We've actually grown peppers in the past. We've grown root vegetables in the past. So we've grown potatoes and beets, and they were delicious, but they came out in kind of funky different shapes. So, which is fine, but it was just, it took a pretty long time. So right now, I think as we get established, we want to find produce that's kind of quick, has a high yield, so we can get it out to the consumer. But as we grow and we become more established, we can test out a few more that may take a little bit of more of a lengthy process.
So can you speak to how 80 acres benefits the local community, and are you at all competing with local farmers?
I would hope that we aren't competing with local farmers. I mean, I think since we are in the produce realm, obviously, some consumer may kind of choose us over, another local farmer, but in no way would I ever want to put down anybody that's, trying to make a living, trying to, harness Mother Earth. So I wouldn't say that we're in direct competition. I think we just kind of want to support everyone as much as we can, because the goal ultimately is, yes, we want to be successful as a business, but I think the goal ultimately is just to, get people aware of this new type of agriculture that we may unfortunately, need in the future. And then also just bringing local produce with no pesticides to the consumer and letting them realize, hey, this is what I've been eating my whole life. This is what it's supposed to taste like. And we are working with the communities. So Hamilton right now, especially in the Hamilton area, we're, hiring people within the communities. Cincinnati as well. We're working with an organization called CHIPS, where we'll have people that may not have had a lot of experience in the past or a job ever. They get to kind of enter in as an intern, and then hopefully they'll be able to join our team full time.
That's great. And when I went up there for a tour, I was speaking with Samantha, and she did mention that you guys actually hire local farmers during the winter when they're not able to work on their own farms.
Yeah,
so that was really impressive.
Thank you.
So I'll wrap this up with one final question. Do you see this as the future of farming?
I do. I definitely do. I think that, I hope that traditional agriculture will still, thrive, but I definitely see this as being the future of farming. And one thing that I really like about it is that we can actually use a smaller amount of land and we can monocrop inside, which is nice. So hopefully, with my hope is there'll be some, huge amount of land that can just go back to growing native plants, hopefully thrive, help the ecosystem thrive, introduce different types of species. Now I feel like I'm a Miss America contestant, but I do definitely think that indoor farming is the future of farming. But I hope the traditional agriculture can still thrive and we can just live side by side. Victoria, did you want to add to that?
Oh yeah, I just definitely think it's, especially too, as coming from a more engineering background, I definitely think always trying to think about how do you solve problems without necessarily having to deplete supplies or destroy what you might have been doing in the past. I feel like this is a great innovation, but it can be taken further. Like she said, you can grow almost anything. Like some things might be a little bit more difficult, but in a place where, like, my mom is from Brazil, very different there, growing agriculture, like being able to grow certain types of crops. So for them to be able to because they have, it's almost like the opposite of us. Like we go through a winter where we can't really like grow anything, but they go through their like summer seasons too, and it's too hot to grow some things. So having an indoor facility that you can, like, I love the little strawberry in the video, like the dial of
Oh
the
yeah. Living the life.
Right, exactly. Like the food is just delicious, and you don't want to think, like, you want your grandma to have the best food. You don't want to think that she's eating food that lost 45% of its nutrients. So it's even from we're just getting things better locally if we have these indoor farms nearby, because we are ourselves now getting the opportunity to have healthy food. Like I bought an avocado the other day and it was from Mexico and it was black by the time I took it home. So I was like, oh no, like I had like something, because in Brazil we can grow avocados outside, but it's like I can't really do that here. So to be able to have something like this in the future, I think would really help everyone.
Agreed. And I see Andrew asked, are we giving tours? So right now, unfortunately, we aren't. We want to see if we can somehow do a virtual tour for the time being. So that's been something we've talked about for a while, but we just need to figure out kind of the specifics of that. We used to do a public tour the first Wednesday of every month. So we would have about 20 people come in, and then we'd give them a tour and a little swag bag and a little tasting. So right now, unfortunately not, but hopefully within the next year, or maybe even less, we'll be able to start kind of slowly implementing that again.
The tours are infectious. That is literally how I found this job. Liz gave me a tomato, gave me a tour, and now look at me.
There you go. She was hooked.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for doing this presentation. Hope everybody enjoyed it. It is being recorded, so I'll try to get it posted to the NKU Sustainability website. And if you have any other questions, feel free to send them to me, and I can forward them on to Liz. And thanks, guys, so much.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Have a great day. Bye.